We are back.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Matters of the Heart and Soul podcast. Happy New Year. And we're in another year, 2026.
Yes, we are. And we're going to go a little deeper this year.
Yeah, we're going deeper. All right. On this episode, as you know, we jump straight into it. We're going to be talking about matriarchal and patriarchal ancestral lineage healing. Okay. And I think this is important because the truth is, we are our ancestors. We really are. And what we heal in our ancestral lineage, we heal in ourselves. And therefore, we heal the future generations. Okay. We spent a lot of time with family over the holidays, and it was just good because we have a lot of generations of family. You know, we have little kids, and so it's important for us to start the conversations of ancestral healing. So that's what we're going to jump into this podcast about. Do you want to add anything to that as far as the importance of ancestral healing?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people want to change the way, say, the society is going right now, but we are a society. So society is a collective group of families and individuals. And in order to fix the macrocosm, we got to fix the microcosm, and that's the self. So everything starts with the self and works out the opposite way. So if we want to heal the land, we have to heal the person. So
That's right. And it's important because a lot of our ancestors were in survival mode. So the things they did was because they were in survival, right? And I think you had maybe your parents, great grandparents saw the things they did, knew it wasn't quite healthy, and maybe internalized that and went maybe all the way left or all the way right, not understanding why they did some of the things they did, right? And emotional imprinting, all right, is very powerful. So inherited emotional trauma and also transferred emotional trauma. So even word of mouth can be transferred trauma, and it can change the DNA. All right, also called epigenetics. So it's important that sometimes you may be feeling the hurt, the pain of your mother, the hurt and pain of your father. You carrying these issues within you, within your heart, and you don't even know why. All right. Some people, there's core wounds that come in utero. All right, depending on what stress that woman was under in utero. So it's so important to understand that when we heal our matriarchal and patriarchal lineage, we're really healing ourselves and we're healing the future generations. So,
yeah, and a lot of things get passed from generation to generation, and there are many people out there just talking to people about genealogy. Many people out there don't even know who their great grandparents are, and let alone the great great and beyond that. But a lot of this gets passed down, and there's good things that get passed down as well. And a lot of us
true.
who don't know that or want to play victim, we only take the bad. But so we're going to touch on some different things today. Hopefully it helps shed some light and gets people to think a little bit deeper.
Yeah. All right. So Russell's a big history kind of guy. What is lineage? What is ancestral lineage? Right. Let's just break it down real simple. What is lineage?
Lineage. Some people will say line ages. It's through the ages your line, right? Like, for example, the Bible starts off, first book in the Bible is what? Genesis, which is dealing with genealogy. So it has to be important if the Bible's starting off with it, right? So as far as your lineage, it's your family line, like your maternal and paternal line. Like, say, for example, my father's line is my Bruce line. So I trace that ancestry back through Virginia. My mother's line, she's an Upshaw, and that goes back into Georgia, like right there in Georgia and Alabama. So I spent a lot of time studying these people and seeing what they were doing And how did I end up in Newcastle, Pennsylvania? So I study that history because that's the history of me. Like, people give you world history, US history, but until you know the history of you're really just kind of lost in the sauce. And you'll start playing make believe, and next thing you know, you're thinking you're somebody that you're not. You're believing in things that your ancestors didn't believe. You're eating foods that they didn't eat, and then you're wondering why you struggle. So
Yeah. And we'll come back, because I want to bring up people who are adopted or who don't have a connection, or who just decide to just walk away from their families for various reasons and stuff like that. How that could be, how it can affect you, right? Abandonment and things like that. So lineage, and so basically ancestral generational is happening over and over again, right? So maybe there's things that's in the ancestral line that has been happening to the men over and over and over again. Maybe it's something in the women that's happening over and over and over again, right? So that's what we want to pay attention to, the patterns that happens in our family. All right. On a medical tip, like if there's a woman who have womb issues, maybe fibroids, maybe a hard time conceiving, fertility issues, I'm always asking, can you tell me a little bit about your mom, your grandmother? Was there any issues having children or anything like that? Is there any trauma in the matriarchal lineage, right? Because the womb is connected to the maternal side, all right, for a woman. So, but let's jump into patriarchy. We want to talk about what are some of the wounds that have to be looked at, all right, have to be healed in the patriarchal ancestral lineage. So, Russell, I'll start with you, right? Let's start with male dominance and control. Let's start with that.
right. So if anybody does any research on the topic of what needs to be healed on these lines, matriarchy and the patriarchy, you will always see those two as the main thing, right? So if you go back and you look in history, in most indigenous cultures, you'll see that they were matriarchs. They were led by the matriarch. So it was all about the mother's line. Land was passed down through the female line, etc. Right? If you go to the movies right now, big blockbuster hit out there, Avatar, Fire and Rain. Matter of fact, all three of them, you notice that there was always the queen mother. She was the decision maker. She played a major role. Like even when the warriors, it was time to go to war, she would let you know if it was a good time to go to war, bad time, etc. Right? She had a major role. She had a major voice. And when everything flipped to, this patriarchy, the woman's voice was silenced. And so now you see coming through the Roman Catholic Church, and it brought its way here to the shores of North America, where women initially weren't allowed to preach in the pulpit. It was shunned upon, and they just wanted her to be seen and not heard. So things like that, people tend to believe that it was always that way, and it wasn't. Like even the concept of God is a he. So if you're worshiping God in spirit and in truth, why would God need to be a he? Why would God need a gender at all? Mm-hmm. But that comes through patriarchy, right? So if someone's coming through wanting to exert their dominance, the story is normally told by the victor, right? So you have right now here in America, you have a male-dominated society where God's a he, and even as a Black man, even though, myself and my people don't, we don't make the policies and so forth here in America, we could vote on them to a certain extent, but we don't make the policies. So we're not controlling whether or not women work, whether they eat, whether they have abortions, all those things like that, right? We don't come up with that, right? Because there's God-given law and then there's man-made law. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these different things that are going on in society today are foreign to our ancestors' culture, right? So these are things that we have to heal. So we either accept them and we continue to go down the path that we're going down, or we try to figure out, hey, when did we thrive, right? Like, for example, 1970s, in the Black community, we were about 93% married, like people who were marrying age. So, and today is probably 23% and headed into the teens rapidly. So what happened? So these are things that this healing that needs to occur. These are things that we need to work on, right?
Okay.
If we want to fix the problem.
So in the male dominance and the control, what is something you recommend in the healing process? And we'll give some tips just overall on how to start that process of ancestral lineage healing. But what are just some things off the top of your head that maybe we implement how to balance, because it's about balance, that male dominance, male control?
Well, first of all, if we go back and look, like, when it all occurred, and then, like, even in the 60s, coming through the 60s with women liberation movement, right? And, you know, because women were being dominated, like they didn't have a voice, they weren't allowed to vote, you know, and all the way up through the 1940s, you know, before World War II, you know, they were kind of just subjugated to being housewives or maybe cleaning somebody's house. So we have to take a look at that. Now women have the right to vote. There are more women in the workforce today than men. And in some cases, matter of fact, in a lot of cases, in some communities, women are more educated and they're probably generate more revenue than the men. So some may feel that creates an issue in the household, but, you know, is it sustainable, right? Like, I could drive down the street in my car with my feet, but I wouldn't advise anybody to do that, right? So, you know, the family structure where the man goes out and, you know, he provides for his family, that's kind of been tampered with through, you know, I would say that we've been socially engineered into a situation where if we don't really understand what's going on, it's going to be very difficult in order to sustain relationships. So
true. And I want to just parallel that the male dominance and control to the matrilineal wound of internalized oppression, which is no voice, basically, right? You know, that it's better for a woman to be quiet, right? And that is a very ancestral wound, okay? Because like Russell just said, women didn't have a voice, all right? Women were in the home, or if she had a voice, it wasn't external. You mostly heard the voice of the male, right? Out speaking or whatever it was. The woman had that quiet voice at home. And I think there's still power and wisdom in that. I just think that we have to heal it in balance, because a woman who cannot speak up for herself, internalizes everything, is not healthy, is a toxic way of dealing with herself, her relationship, her children. And what happens is she ends up blowing up at some point, because you cannot keep all that internalized issues that you have. So, but I think that is definitely an ancestral wound, that internalized oppression, the no voice of the woman. And even now, I think even now, when we look out on certain platforms, podcasts, social media, and I tell Russell this a lot, I'm like, all I hear is men talking so much about everything, where women, they're out there, but it's kind of like the voice is almost like it just muffled in the background. And we still see that, right? And that's why it's important, I think, for the balance, because Russell makes great space for my voice to be heard. And I can appreciate that, right? So I just want to parallel that with the patriarchy. So next on patriarchy is emotional suppression, right? Which can lead to mental health struggles, aggression in men, and toxic living like alcohol or drug abuse. Because we hear of the men that go into the man's cave and he never comes out. He never comes out of the man cave, which really he's inside of himself as well.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly what happened recently. There was something in the news where a man was watching the game and his wife
Yeah.
changed the channel
Yep.
and he shot and killed her and her child, which I don't know all the details, but that's a sign of toxic masculinity.
There was a history of domestic abuse going on.
Yeah. But and when it comes to men, like they say, women cry and men get angry, right? So a lot of time men internalize a lot of things and hold on to it. Women tend to have more support groups. They'll go out and eat with their girls and they'll dump on each other and share and get advice. Most men look at it as a form of weakness. They're not going to talk. They're going to hold it in. They want everybody to think that that everything is everything, right? And that they can handle anything that comes their way. And you have a lot of these guys on the inside that are just boiling over.
Where in the ancestral line do you think this came about?
Well, it definitely would come when everything flipped from the matriarchy to patriarchy, right? Because it's like now there's just a lot on a man. Like, say, for example, here in America, it's a white male dominated society. So, as far as the black male is concerned, he's kind of subjected to whatever the white norm is, right? So if they're saying, hey, the man's supposed to go out and, take care of his woman and she stays at home and just cooks clean, has babies, yada, yada, yada. Well, you can't just stop right there, right? Because it's like you're talking about one household may have an income average of 120,000 and another one 60,000. They can't do the same thing. They can't live in the same neighborhoods. So, and they can't send their kids to the same type of schools, et cetera. So sometimes it may take two incomes or the women may have to pitch in. So, we run into a lot of things like that we don't talk about, right? So it puts a little bit more pressure, particularly on black men. Right now, you see an increase in suicide.
Mm-hmm.
So, because there's a lot of pressure and you're told not to cry, not to whine, not to, complain about anything. You're always having to take the high road, as far as things that are going on in society or at your job. And when you come home, that's the one place where you feel that, like a dominant character, right? So you have a lot of these men who haven't really sorted these things out and they become abusive to their wife and kids or their partner at home.
Yeah, because they can't take that aggression out on their boss or because they need their job. So they come home and, especially, our grandparents, great grandparents, and they would take it out on their wives.
Right. And the thing is, it could be because, okay, they seen that their father and maybe their grandfather, they were able to take care of their grandmother and their mother, but if you look, the dollar doesn't have the same value today that it had in 1920 or say 1950. So, they could have made less money back then and be able to buy a home and a car and, pay for their kids to go to school, et cetera. But, it is different now. And unless we look at things in their totality and quit just taking little sound bites, trying to argue points or to fix things, we're never going to get to the bottom part of this because it's not always one shoe fits all. And another thing, even say these men who might be gay and not living on the DL, we live in Atlanta, so we hear that there's tons of that, but you have a lot of them who don't want to come out the closet and, somebody finds out or they just feel they're not being themselves and they might unalive themselves. So yeah, it plays out in many different ways. So,
Yeah. So the emotional suppression. So parallel to that, on the matriarchal side, I would say that, one of the wounds that should need to be looked at and healed would be self-sacrifice and self-abandonment. Okay, because there was a generation of women, and still is, that they sacrifice themselves for, let's say, their husband and their children and their family, right? To the point of exhaustion, to the point of they don't even know who themselves. They put everybody else above themselves before they take care of themselves. So, and I think what has happened, and matter of fact, I know for sure, I've had some girlfriends tell me that they witnessed that in their household. And it could have been a situation where the mother sacrificed herself for the husband and the children and everything. And then the husband cheats or is toxicity in it. And so the daughter, who's my age, is like, I don't want no parts of that. I don't want no parts of that, right? Not understanding that perhaps there was some issues that needed to be healed, but instead she might have taken on that emotional burden from her mom, decides that I don't want no parts of that, and don't even want to be married or don't even want that partnership anymore. So we just have to really, when there's something in you that keeps occurring, or a pattern in your life, just ask yourself, why is this happening and where is it coming from? Because there is a big generation of women who have put themselves, self-sacrificed themselves for children and the family, and just, they put themselves last. So I think that is definitely an area to be healed. There is enough space for us as women to make sure we are good first. I always tell Russell that I'm going to give from my overflow, because when I'm good, everybody else in the house will be good. And I think we just have to realize that you could set boundaries as women, and that you have to heal that. You just can't go all the way left or all the way right, depending on what you saw, right, in the ancestral lineage.
Yeah. And a lot of people used to use the happy wife, happy life, but today,
I think that's modern.
well, today is happy spouse, happy house.
Yes,
both
yes,
people
yes,
need to be happy, right?
Yep.
But I think
Agreed.
it just takes a lot of communication, checking in on one another, like, hey, what can we fix? How can we get better? Me being a former athlete, it's like, even when you win, you can win the championship, you come back next year to play, you still want to get better, because now you're on top and the underdog's trying to knock you off. So you got to stay on your game, right? So we're not just satisfied with being married. We're still every day trying to better ourselves for ourselves and for each other and for our children and for the greater good of the community.
Yep. All right. So the next talking point is on the patriarchal is performance over connection.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah. What do you got to say about that?
Yeah. So it goes into something that everybody's probably hearing these days more of, is that the collaboration over competition, right? So
yeah, because performance would fall under that competition.
Yeah, under competition. It's like competition is good in sports, right? But in everyday life, like say in business, in relationships, like I wouldn't want to come and compete with my wife, which, talking to a lot of different couples, you hear this competition between the spouses. It might be silent, a little passive aggressive thing going on.
Yeah.
Instead of collaboration, right? Because it's like, we're going to accomplish more by working together, like finding out what, her strengths are, what my strengths are and weaknesses, so that we can counterbalance and have each other's back. So we're always like, see a need, fix a need. So it's like, we're not stuck on, because she's a woman, she should be in the kitchen cooking, and I'm sitting on the couch after she comes home from work, and I'm expecting her to get in the kitchen and cook something when I've been sitting at home all day.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. I love to cook as a man. Most of you, when you go to the restaurant, there's men in the kitchen cooking your food 90% of the time. So it's like, we balance that out. Like if I have to go into the office and I'm working long hours or whatever, and I come home, if she cooks well, even though I cook the majority of the time. I love the way she cooks salmon. It comes out a lot better than mine. But so yeah, not communication, but collaboration over competition.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't always be, just me trying to outperform or do anything like that within a relationship or even in a community. I think even in a community, like, for example, we live in a very racist society, no matter what people like to say.
I was going to ask you, what do you think in the ancestral lineage, just needing to perform? And I think, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think is this programming that we've always felt the need, we have to prove ourselves. So let me perform, let me outdo the person at work, let me, especially people of color, right? I got to show up. I got to work harder than everybody else. So for men and women, I think that this patriarchal wound it's a wound for both men and women, right? The performance, we have to perform.
Performance, or go back to the other word, performance over.
You said collaboration over competition. Yeah, but it's the same.
You're saying right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you're right, because you also hear that, hey, we have to work twice as hard to get half as much. But I always say work to your potential, not to your quota, because I believe my ancestors and myself are very gifted human beings.
Mm-hmm.
We do multiple things very well. So as long as I'm like giving my all at anything I do, like we always say, it's like how you do one thing is how you do everything. So I'm going to approach it giving my all. I'm going to learn as much about it. Either I'm not going to participate at all, but if it's something that I'm going to participate in, I'm going to try to do my best. I'm going to try to perform at the highest level. But, as far as a competition and collaboration, I just think where people need to see what people's strengths are and what their weaknesses are. And if everybody from, say, a community standpoint, supports and allow those people to thrive in areas in which they're strong, it just makes for a better community and society. And especially in the household,
mm-hmm.
like situations where, if the woman, say, is better at finances than the man, it's like, why would the man want to just say, hey, I'm going to bounce the checkbook, I'm going to decide this, that, and another just because I'm a man? That's ludicrous. That's not even being intelligent.
Yeah. And parallel on the matriarchy is the wound of women having a fear of power and visibility. And what I have heard a lot of, especially I'll say generationally from less, generations older than me, is that, sometimes you have to rub your husband's ego. You have to stroke his ego. You have to make him appear like he's more than what he really is, right? And I feel that is a wound, and we really have to look at that, and we have to heal that. All right. I think we have to stay in truth and in honesty with our partners, with our husband, with our sons. Okay. Because, to make somebody feel something that they're not is really a lack in them. And all you're doing is really perpetuating that wound, that deep wound that they already have. So I just feel like there's a way to respect each other, to honor each other's strengths and weaknesses, like Russell said, but not feeling like we have to stroke anybody's ego to make somebody feel bigger, larger, or any of that, right? I think we have to, no doubt, respect. Like at the end of the day, we could respect each other, but to stroke the patriarchy's wound, ego, is a big wound that I think women have done generationally, ancestrally, and we really have to look at that. Now, whether that woman was doing that also from a broken place of wanting to get something from that man, because that's also manipulation. And we know that women do use emotional manipulation. They use a lot of things to manipulate to get what they want. But I think that we have to stand in truth and honesty with our partners and our spouses. Yeah. So that's a big wound in parallel with that.
And I think if two people really love and respect one another, you should be able to tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear.
Yeah, like in honesty and truth. And if Russell was to ever tell me something, I'm going to stop and I'm going to evaluate that, because I know it's coming from a good place. It's coming from a sincere heart. And I know that he doesn't want anything but good things for me and for us. So if there's something that he says, hey, I want to talk to you about this, I'm going to stop and I'm going to evaluate that in truth and in honesty. I don't think that we should stroke nobody's ego at all.
Vice versa.
Yeah. All right. So next patriarchal wound is social status. You know, like needing to feel or look a certain way and this kind of thing, whether it's in the boardroom or whether it's the title of something. How did that become a patriarchal wound ancestrally?
Well, once again, a patriarchal society is very competitive, right? So it's dog eat dog, you know, and that's why you have this fight around the world, whether, you know, the society should allow socialism, communism, or capitalism to rule, you know. And of course, capitalism is everything's for sale, including your mama. And
yeah,
so it's just, I don't know. Go ahead, tell me what you think, and then we're gonna come back to me.
Social. I think I just said it. Social status wound ancestrally. I think that there's the undertone, right? That a lot of things is how we look on the outside. It doesn't matter what's really going on in the house. Is what we're gonna look like outside of the house. So if there was terrible things going on in that house, toxic things, don't say anything, because that's going to ruin the social status of the family, of the man, of the woman, of whatever, right? Gotcha. So even, you know, divorce was frowned upon. Women did not get divorced and was in very domestic abusive situations because of the social status of how it looked.
Yeah.
And I think we have to really evaluate that.
Yeah, that's deep. We could talk about a lot.
Yeah, it's deep. I said it's ancestral.
Yeah, let me say this. It's because with social media now, you know, you have a situation where you have a lot of people who, you know, it's probably before that, but now it's worse, right? People who want to be in a relationship or be married just so they could post pictures, right? So it's like, they want that special day where the superstar, they could walk down the aisle, cameras flashing, all eyes on me, but they don't really want the tenets of being a husband or a wife. You know, so when the lights go off and everything gets quiet, you know, they go to probably two separate places in the house, or one of them leaves out the house for the next 8 hours, going doing something outside of their spouse. And you know, that's not cool. But then we have all kind of different dilemmas, right? So there's this saying, I remember Dennis Kimbrough said that poor people keep score with cars and clothes. Middle class people keep score with titles and degrees, and the rich keep score with their bank accounts.
Yeah.
But one of my friends said that, you know, like the righteous, right, keep score by their service to humanity. And I think there's certain things that if we keep in the center, like service to humanity and just being a good human being, if we keep that at the center, then I think we're headed in the right direction, because all the others, they lead nowhere.
Yeah. And another one, and we actually had talked to somebody about how divorce affects the effects are different from man to woman. And I think this falls in social status, because I think men it's almost like men are looked upon as failures, maybe to their families in a certain kind of way when a man gets divorced versus, let's say, a woman gets a divorce. I think it hits deeper, it hits harder for men. And I think that's also something ancestrally that we have to look at as well.
Yeah, that one right there, it probably could be debatable, right? Because I do a lot of genealogy, right? And I see some of these men, a lot of them were married multiple times. I've seen a lot of men, like the average family with one woman was maybe 10 kids. Seen a lot of them might have anywhere between 20, 25 kids with 3, 4 different women. So I don't think they had too much of a problem.
That's a whole nother thing too.
Yeah. And then here's the other thing, and we're going to do a podcast on this one, is that they tended to always find a younger spouse when they remarried. But, you know, I think in today's society, especially in our community, where there's a situation where right now we're like in the 20 percentile as far as marriage, and there's a certain percentage of women that will never get married. So, you know, for women who have been married multiple times and one hadn't been married, how do you think the one that's never been asked for her hand in marriage feels? So,
yeah.
So I think if a woman is not married, I don't think they want to fall into that pool of unmarried in today's society. But back in the day, it could have been different, right? Because
I just think the social status, right?
Yeah.
I think because you and I watched a program where you know, to be married was a sign of prosperity as well. So to break that was, I think it probably looked a little bit bad on the man more than the woman or whatever. So
yeah, and I think you're right in that sense. In society, as far as like, if you're going to do business with somebody, right, and you're going to be in this long-term commitment with them, you have to approach it almost as if it's a relationship. I read a book on that. Can't remember the name of it. I think it's called Let's Go Into Business or whatever.
Yeah.
But you can't just be infatuated because they got a lot of money or, you know, all these people like them, you know, because it's the same thing. It's like if they are not committed to, say, their wife and their children, what makes me think in business they're going to be committed and faithful to me as a business partner? So I think about that. Like if I'm going to do business with somebody and I see that they're a horrible father, they don't spend time with their children, or, you know, their children really don't even know they exist or whatever, it's like, nah, partner, we not rocking like that.
Yeah. All right. So the next wound is, let me tell you the parallel to the matriarchy from the social status. Women being disconnected from innate wisdom. And I think that's so important because that's the ancestral wound. I think I'm just grateful for the wisdom that I've accumulated from my mom and stuff like that. But I know that most women now are innately disconnected from that wisdom. And, it's like a lack of internal guidance, or creative expression, and just being able to innately connect to that wisdom, right? To bring about things for the family and stuff like that. So I think that kind of parallels to the wound of social status with patriarchy, is that we have lost our innate connection to wisdom. And I think that's something we have to look at ancestrally in the lineage. Where did we lose it? How did we lose it? So,
yeah. And I think it happened when the Europeans came here and enforced religion upon our people, when they were more into natural law.
That's it.
And, once again, going back, looking at Avatar, right, when you had the Queen Mother who pretty much ruled the tribe, and there was something my mom would always say, growing up, even though she only had an 8th grade education, she would be like, Russell, she goes, I have something called mother wit, mother wisdom.
Yeah.
And, and a lot of that came from, she was raised predominantly by her grandmother, my great grandmother, grew up down in Muskogee County, Georgia, before her and my grandmother, when my grandmother was 3 years old, moved up to Pennsylvania. So they had these Southern roots, and my grandmother is the one who taught her how to cook and spewed a lot of that old school wisdom on her. And, my mom wasn't big on going to church, but she was a spiritual person. Like, she would play her gospel music on Sunday while she was cooking, and I'd wake up to hear her singing and the house smelling like food.
Yeah.
And that was the way she showed love, right?
Yeah. And, and that's a whole nother podcast, because we really have to talk about the ancestral lineage and the wounding with the church. Because I think at some point the church was strong. I think at some point it was strong, right? But I think that what religion does is it forces, and I'm going to speak just women, right? Matriarchal healing is that it forces women to look outside of themselves for whatever they need, versus going internally and understanding that wisdom, that innate wisdom, that divine spark that's within us to bring about whatever we need. So I think we do have to look at where that was lost, how do we get it back, and how do we heal it within ourselves, and so that future generations can have that healing as well.
Yeah, and you could look, just studying history. If you go back into the Egyptian culture, you see Isis and Horus, that later got translated into the Black Madonna, where you see the Madonna and Child, and then later it was Jesus and Mary.
Yeah.
And the woman had a lot of power, right? Because if Jesus is the Son of God, and what does that make Mary? She's the mother of God, right? But and that goes back into something totally different. But the form of Christianity that we see today is very male dominated. That's why you have so many denominations just within Christianity itself. The same thing with Islam. Allah is the name of God, but prior to that, it was Allah. It was a feminine deity.
Yeah.
And the further you go back into the ancient world, there were a lot of feminine deities throughout culture, even here in America. They had Lady Columbia that was later changed to Lady Liberty and all this stuff. But now we're back to this male dominated society.
Yeah.
Have our feet on women's neck, people of color. And, it's changing. So that's why there's so much turmoil in the world. But the thing is, in order for us to balance out the turbulence, we have to get a deeper knowledge of what happened historically in order to fix what's happening currently.
Yeah. And on my personal journey of healing the feminine aspect and that divine mother within me was that I had to abolish calling God he. Because every time I would say he, it was almost like I was abandoning myself. So I completely changed that. And I just say the divine, or if I'm going to say mother God, father God together, right? If we have to have a gender on it, but I just say the divine. And the more I said that, the more that mother energy rose in me. And I was able to really, really understand that on a deep level, right? Because when you realize the importance of the womb and a lot of the feminine deities and mythology and stuff like that, it's telling us some important things that have been forgotten.
Yeah. And a lot of people just can't grasp the concept of a paternal, maternal, I don't even want to say deity. God just is, right?
He just is.
God is everything and nothing at the same time.
Exactly.
So there really would be no sex on it. But if you do want to put one on, it has to be both male and female.
And if you look at the laws of nature, right? That's a law of nature, that everything it has both masculine and feminine energies, right? So, and we have that within us. So if we only see the spark of the divine in us as a he, then where is the feminine? Where is that part? And in order for that part to rise, I think in women, you have to honor that. You have to allow space for that. You have to start allowing that mother energy to rise within you as well. Just like you say he, you could say she, but I just say the divine because it's all things. So
yeah, and that's a podcast for
it
another
is.
day because we'd have to break that all the way down to
Yeah.
nucleus.
All right. So we got just a few more topics and then we're going to wrap it up. The last thing I want to talk about for healing patriarchal is how about PTSD for men that went to war?
Oh yeah,
Ancestrally.
That's a real thing. Yeah. So just looking back, say on my Bruce bloodline, like my great grandfather fought in the Civil War on the Union side, and my great grandfather fought in the military. My grandfather and my father enrolled. I think I'm the first of, say, the last 5 men who didn't go to war. I went to college instead, even though I was standing outside one day ready to go ahead and join the Marines, but I didn't do it. But yeah, so a lot of them, looking, and I'm not going to blame it on the military, but they did not live, they did not live as long as my 4-time great grandfather and some of the others. The further I go back, when supposedly they were enslaved or servitude, they actually lived a lot longer than the ones that were supposed to be free. So I'm not sure how much of, them fighting in the Civil War, World War I and II, like what role that played. They survived it, but a lot of times they come home, with PTSD. Mm-hmm. And, society was not treating them right as Black men. So,
I mean, look at our veterans now.
Oh, it's not good.
Yeah. So I think that's something we also have to recognize ancestral and look at the wounds there. And parallel to that, I would say is just the dysfunctional coping mechanisms that women have ancestrally done, right? I think there was this thing to be silent and obedient. All right. So I think with that done, it internalized a lot of anger for women, lack of coping skills, how to effectively communicate, right? And express anger or whatever upset a woman directly versus her crying, holding it in, being silent, just stirring it out versus truly expressing that. And I think we have to really, 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 really look at that, at the women in our lineage.
Yeah, and if you go back, say in 1940s during World War II, when the men are off fighting, they started introducing women into the workforce, giving them jobs, going in, helping make the weapons, the bullets, etc., to ship off for war. And when the war ended, these men not only come back home with PTSD, they come back and the woman had their job.
Yeah.
So that created issues.
Yeah. Then you could imagine if a man doesn't have purpose, he doesn't have work, what type of mental toll that takes on him. So, all right. So as you know, we like to bring up, things that need to be healed, the issues, but we also like to bring solutions. So Russell, what are some steps to healing ancestral lineage on the matriarchal and patriarchal lines? What's the first thing people should do?
Just like they always said in the ancient world, in Egypt, on the tombs, in Greece, Rome, know thyself.
Know thyself.
That's the number one rule, because when you know yourself, you know God, you know the universe.
Ooh,
so
that right
I
there.
would say everybody needs to do their genealogy.
Yeah.
If you don't know who your great grandparents are, some people might not even know their grandparents. You don't know your great grandparents, and try to go as far as you can, because that history is going to tell you the real history of not only America, it's going to tell you the true history of what happened during the slave trade, because it didn't happen the way everybody thinks it happened. And you get to see what your grandparents or great grandparents were doing, because there were some things that just happened a couple grandmas ago in this country that turned it upside down. Because I know in my ancestry, hers, they were they were farmers. They owned thousands of acres of land, and a couple things changed, right? And all of a sudden, they were either chased off their land or land just outright stolen. And we ended up in different areas in most cases. And most of us know nothing about what happened to us. So I would say, know your genealogy, right? And if you want to do your DNA after that, that's cool. But number one, do your genealogy, because there are records out there. There's marriage records, there's death records, there's censuses starting from the 1790s forward. In some cases, depending upon the family line, it'll take you back further. Some of my lines, I can go back as far as the 1400s. You know, on hers, some of them I went all the way back to 900 AD. Now, the accuracy, once it gets back there, not sure, but it leads you in the right direction, because some of these bloodlines tie back to the royal families, and that's a whole nother story for a different day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would say number one, know thyself.
Yeah, I agree with you. Know thyself. When you know yourself, you're going to know everything else, all the mystery, up under the sun. I think study your parents, study your grandparents if you still have them, talk to them. Also, stay aware, stay observant, so that you could see what are some of the traumas maybe your parents are going through, and you could recognize it, and you could see them as humans, right? And you can hold compassion for them, but you don't have to repeat that for yourself or for your family or for your children. You can say, hey, my parents went through that, and that part I don't want. But this part I love that they did, and I'm gonna also instill that in my children, right? So be observant. Be aware, pay attention to what's happening in the lives of the people that you're around. But I would definitely say have those family talks. We just had holiday time. It's so important to share information, talk to your family, especially the generations behind you and the generations above you, because that's how we connect everything, right? Because that's the only way that we truly heal, is that we got to know who we are, know thyself. Yeah.
Yes, facts.
Yeah, so that's it, guys. Do you have anything else, Russell?
No, that sums it up.
Yeah. So again, we appreciate you guys. We're grateful to be here in 2026. 2025 was a great year, and we are looking for an even better year in 2026. We appreciate all of the listeners who's been with us over the years. Each year, each season, we try to go deeper. This podcast is all about, it's inspired by spirituality, knowing yourself, knowing who you are, healing, and just becoming the best and highest version of yourself. And it's about awakening humanity to everything that is already within you, because everything we want is already within us. We just got to do the work to get there. So we appreciate you guys, and we will catch you all at the next episode. Until then,
peace.
Take care.